Welcome, everyone. My name is Sandra Rowling. I'm the Director of Transport at the Climate Group. I'm very excited to be here today to share a few experiences about the question of where in the world it is already possible to make the transition to electric fleets. This is based on the fact that as Climate Group, we work on climate leadership with international companies and governments. And one of the key activities that we're known for is running an initiative called EV100, which brings together international companies committed to go electric by 2030. And that's about over 120 businesses around the world who together manage 5.75 million vehicles, and who already today, or rather as of September last year, when was our last reporting cycle, over 400,000 electric vehicles were already on the road in the fleets of those companies. And that's from a global perspective, so in over 60 countries around the world. So probably a first part of my answer to the question, where in the world is it possible, is probably in a lot more places than the average person would expect or imagine. And this is, of course, something I'm here today to encourage you to consider in terms of your own fleet's work as well. We're at this stage, I think in 23, it's expected that globally we're going to reach 18% of electric vehicle sales share worldwide. So I think that's quite impressive. If you look at just a couple of years ago, we were still in the one-digit sales percentages. Clearly, we are seeing the famous S-curve in operations. At this stage, it's every 1.2 years that the percentage doubles. So we're very much on track here, and that is because of technology developments, market uptake, and it is also because of political leadership. And of course, we're seeing a clear correlation between EV uptake and the possibility of going electric for corporate fleets as well, and the ambition of certain governments. So if we look at the international frontrunners, China is top. That probably doesn't need a lot of explaining and discussing. But the second runner up at this stage is Europe, where one of our leasing members does an annual car cost index where they compare the cost of leasing an electric vehicle and an internal combustion engine vehicle. And already in December 2022, they came to the conclusion that depending on exactly what car segment you were looking at, between 18 or 19 out of 22 markets, an electric vehicle would either be cost competitive or even cheaper than an ICE vehicle from a total cost of ownership point of view. So that gives you a sense of where in Europe it's already possible to go electric, basically almost everywhere. And since then, we've obviously seen the introduction of effectively an ICE phase-out date by 2035 in the European Union, as well as the adoption of the alternative fuel infrastructure regulation that obliges all EU member states to install charging infrastructure along similar specifications across the EU territory as well. So both of those will obviously only increase the availability of vehicles, the cost competitiveness, and then also with regards to charging infrastructure, the sort of practical feasibility for continuing to go electric all across the territory. And the UK is obviously not part of the EU anymore, but very similarly has obviously its own ICE phase-out by 2035, and equally a ZEV mandate that has been announced or confirmed just recently. And we're already seeing in the market that definitely going electric is not a question, but a wholesale possibility at this stage. The next runner-up is the United States, which has seen a massive step change in terms of perception of electric vehicles over the last couple of years. For a long time, it was in particular California that was known for being a leader on electric vehicles. They had set a trajectory to phase out internal combustion engine vehicles by 2035 early on. And legally, other states are also able to then adopt the same legislation. So there's about 10 of them in the process of, or who have already approved similar legislation. So that's a 25% of the US market already covered by the same trajectory for phasing out ICE vehicles. But crucially, of course, lots of companies operate across the country. They need to know whether they can use EVs across the board. And that's where some of the developments at federal level come in, with the Inflation Reduction Act that has given a massive boost to investment and in electric vehicles and supply chains, etc. But also the national EV infrastructure package that has seen the government spend a good, 7.5 billion on charging infrastructure, where every single state now has a plan to roll out charging in the way that means you will have DC fast chargers every 50 miles as a minimum across all the major connections roads around the country. And that's obviously going to be a massive game changer for those that operate fleets all over the US. Latin America is an example where there's a lot of interest, but maybe some more work to be done in convincing the OEMs to provide the vehicle supply. There is a sense that maybe the US is first, Europe is first as a market, and we find that some of the companies we work with have to make a strong case to the OEMs to provide the vehicles, and this is obviously one of the things that we want to do with initiatives like EV100. But equally, again, it depends on political leadership. And it does vary country by country. So Chile, for example, has equally set an ICE phase-out date by 2035 and has already implemented a regulatory package to make that happen as well. And Costa Rica is currently the front runner with 7.3% electric vehicle share already in its sales. So quite compatible actually with some of the European countries, which not everyone might be aware of. And then for my final example of a place where we do a lot of work as Climate Group as well, that would be India. India has ambitious targets at federal level, amongst others, for example, for 70% of commercial car sales to be electric by 2030. But also a lot of states are very actively engaged, amongst others, because of air pollution, which of course is a major health concern in some of the major cities. So we work very closely, for example, with the government of Delhi, which wants to see one of 4 vehicles minimum to be electric by 2024. And we have an active work program with them to involve corporate fleets in that journey as well, work on electrifying last mile delivery, working on heavy duty with some companies as well. So that's an example where there's a lot of openness from governments to be working with businesses as well. And that's maybe my final message to all of you. I hope I've given a bit of flavor of what our members are doing and where they're being active already. I'm not saying that this is as easy as just continuing with the ICE fleets that they're used to. It does require change. It does require some active pushing and some bit more creativity to work in those newer territory areas as well. But we do believe it's worth it for the climate, for public health, for demonstrating leadership and for future-proofing your fleets as well, knowing that the growing consensus from where I sit around the world is that we do need to phase out ICE vehicles by 2035 in leading markets, but by 2040, the very latest around the world, which is also what we're going to be talking about a lot at the International Climate Negotiations this year, where I'm headed in the next couple of days. So big invitation to all of you to please consider fleet electrification across your global fleet. Don't do it alone. Look out for those partnerships. Look for opportunities to work with governments and with other companies to take the first steps together. If you're interested in hearing more, www.theclimategroup.org/EV100 is where you find all the information about our work. Also some of the data from our annual reporting, which talks in more detail about what our members are doing, what their experiences are around the world, and of course, all the information for how to join us should you be so inclined. Thank you very much, and very much looking forward to being in touch.